Welcome to Complicated Opportunities, a CosmereRPG podcast with a couple of GMs. This week, we are going to be covering chapters 7 and 8, which is items, goals, and rewards. So, Irving, if you want to go ahead and get us started, we'll roll from there.
Yeah, so items, or how you do things in the game, are sort of starting point with this. You can have several different kinds of items. You have your spheres, which are just your currency, starting kits, which are sort of groupings of items that let you sort of tailor your character at the start. Weapons, exactly what it says, armor, sort of generic equipment, things like your rope, climbing spikes, etc. And then travel materials. And then finally, fabrials, and then the crafting of any of those above materials, including fabrials. So jumping right into spheres, how do you buy things, Kyle?
So basically, we have like a currency conversion table. The one of the things I like that they did with this is like under a shard, there's multiple different types of spheres. There's different sizes, shapes, different, and they all have like different values. They do have a conversion chart, but the cool thing I like is they're like, hey, just say that everything's based on marks, so that way it simplifies like what you're carrying, and you don't have to remember, well, I have this one emerald brome and then these two diamonds and this one garnet. You're not breaking all that down. So they do break it down just into marks. Which just makes it easier to track on your character sheet and as you're buying different equipment.
Well, and not only is it marks, it's the central point currency is a diamond mark, and then everything kind of has a value based off of that.
Yeah, and that's where the conversion chart will kind of break all that down for you as well.
Which is page 246 of the PDF.
Yep. Yeah, I keep remembering you're using the PDF because I'm still just rolling in Demiplane because it's just what I always have up.
It's page 242 of the regular handbook.
Gotcha.
The paper one, yeah.
Yeah. But then, so we mentioned this when you were creating your character, where you choose a starting kit, and this is where they line out what those kits are. Like, there's a few different ones, like academic, artisan, military, courtier, prisoner, and underworld. They kind of explain themselves pretty well. Military kit's going to get you your stuff like that, and your underworld one's going to be your like roguey type stuff.
But the one that go underworld.
Yeah, exactly. But the one that is worth pointing out is out of the 6 kits, the prisoner one, for narrative reasons, obviously you don't have anything. Like, you don't have weapons, you don't have armor. You are just a prisoner with manacles. But so to kind of help for that narratively, when you start as a prisoner, you have actually attracted a radiant sprint. And you have already got 2 ticks towards the first ideal, so you're close to swearing the first ideal when you show up narratively. So they do give you a little bit of a reward there because you're sacrificing, not really starting with any equipment.
Yeah. The Oblivion / Skyrim starter kit. I guess Morrowind too. So all of those modern Elder Scrolls games. Exactly. It's just a prisoner. The other ones, they kind of fit generic archetypes. So you can really, you can be a warrior with an artisan's kit. You don't have to take the military kit. It's not required, but it just sort of leans into how you want to do your playstyle. On to weapons. Weapons are going to be 90% of the way. You deal damage to your adversaries in the game. So, your standard things like a sword or a couple different types of swords, really, spears. And there are some notable rules that kind of come with weapons. So it takes an action to draw a weapon and pull it out, unless, when you start combat, if you're not surprised, you automatically draw your weapon. That's part of starting combat. But say you have multiple and you want to switch between them. It is an action to draw that weapon. You can have weapons in your offhand. Generally, I don't think it works too well. You have to use 2 focus, is it, Kyle, to attack with an offhand weapon?
Yeah, if you want to make an attack with an offhanded weapon, you do have to spend 2 focus. Now, I believe some of the trees do have some talents that can dial that back a little bit. But yeah, 2 focus, which you don't start off with a lot of focus. So you do have to be a little more strategic about if you're wanting to like go in for a kill or something like that, or start combat off doing a lot of damage, because you can very quickly run out of focus if you keep using your offhand strike.
Oh, and actually another way to reduce that cost is with a topic we're going to bring up here just now, weapon traits. If a weapon has the offhand trait, it only costs 1 focus instead of 2 for that additional strike.
I kind of forgot that, so glad you brought that up.
I thought it was a thing because I was like, man, dagger expertise gets you the offhand trait. What does that do? And so on that note, expert traits are things you get sort of added onto your weapon if you take an expertise with them, which were those fiddly things that you could do. We talked about it around character statistics. It lets you, if you have expertise in knives, you're truly a master of that weapon. You get all these extra features that just make it a better weapon. And there's a handful of weapon traits that you can either have default on a weapon or unlock through expertise. Kyle, do you have any favorites?
Ooh, I really like the deadly one. Not gonna lie.
Fair enough.
With deadly, if you roll an opportunity, you can basically bypass all of their hit points to then go ahead and cause an injury. So, fun fact for me, I mentioned that I didn't start out playing D&D. I started out playing the Star Wars D20 game, and that was actually, they did HP similar to this, where it was you had vitality points and then wound points, which did immediate damage to your. So, like when you ran out of vitality, when you started taking hits, your hit points went down, and that was your actual health. That's when you started taking real damage. And if you rolled I said rolled an opportunity. If you rolled a nat 20, you did a critical strike and in that game, that meant you immediately started attacking their wound points and bypassed their vitality. So, not gonna lie, it gives me that little nostalgia feel from the first game that I played. So I like that.
I imagine lightsabers probably came with the deadly trait, huh?
Absolutely.
Nice. Yeah, I think my favorite is momentum,
Mm-hmm.
which is if you move 10 feet and at least in a straight line towards your target, you gain advantage on the attack. Something about that's just like, yeah, I'm coming for you and it's going to hurt. There are also quote unquote negative traits, so things that can be a drawback, like fragile. When you attack with this weapon, GM can spend a complication to cause it to break after the attack is resolved. So, and a lot of times, if it has a sort of negative trait, your expertise will get rid of that trait for you.
Yeah, and if you're using improvised weapons, they almost always have the fragile trait.
Yeah, I think that's a caveat of an improvised weapon.
Yeah.
That actually might be the only weapon with the fragile trait in the book.
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah, it is.
Yep.
Fragile is kind of fun. It's a good, in the way improvised weapons work in this game, just a tangent about weapons, you basically ask your player, okay, what are you intending to use this chair leg as? And they're like, well, I want to use the chair leg as a mace. And so it'll roll and have sort of the stats of a mace, it just also has fragile. And I think that's a really cool way to do it. A lot of times improvised weapons are like just kind of useless. And this way it feels like they actually have some use. Obviously it'd be hard to be like, yeah, this improvised weapon is a greatsword. I'm sorry, how are you improvising a 3-foot steel blade?
Yeah, absolutely. I do like that it does that, and we'll get into the radiant stuff later. But I also like how it took me a minute how the unarmed attacks work because they always scale because they're also included in the weapons. Which is funny because they're not considered weapons, but what is cool with them is they're always available. So like hypothetically, if you're swinging with one weapon and like this person's got like a hit point left before they're down, like you can also choose to like use your left hand to make an unarmed attack, or like if you have like they're basically just no matter, even if you're holding a weapon, like they're always available, which I think is pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. And unarmed attacks have both the momentum and offhand expertise traits.
I think I always forget that it has momentum.
I've remembered a couple times. I've definitely used the momentum to my advantage.
Yeah. So
the unarmed bit, I forget.
For sure.
Or the offhand bit, I forget.
The one that I do want to highlight is cumbersome, because in some games, like cumbersome means you just straight up can't use that item if you don't have the prerequisite. So in the book, it'll say like cumbersome, and then it'll have a bracket with the number you need for your strength score to be. You can use it, but you do get a disadvantage on all your attacks using that weapon, and you're slowed while you're wielding it. And then your arm, if you have, we'll get into armor in a few, but it can also have cumbersome, and that'll slow you down as well. So it doesn't keep you from using it, but it does make it less effective, which I think makes sense. So I thought that was a really cool way to still use that mechanic.
Yeah, I like how cumbersome is in this game. It they definitely like it's punishing enough that it feels flavorful, but it's not like, oh god, I have to avoid this at all costs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
And then weapons come in a couple categories. On your character sheet, you have heavy weapons and light weapons skills. They are separated into those brackets in the handbook. And then there's also a special third section, special weapons, and those will say like, hey, this you use your heavy weapon skill or your athletics, or for improvised weapon, same as similar weapon when you say what it is. And that's just good to have. I like, D&D has this thing where it's like you either use strength or dexterity for your weapon. And yes, heavy weapon skill and light weapon skill sort of correspond to an equivalent there. However, they're not exactly that. And, even if I have a lower strength than my speed, I can focus in heavy weapons and use my skill points to actually feel like I'm creating this character that fits that vision of like fast but uses a big stick.
Yeah, for sure. So we've gone through heavy, light, like the kind of mundane weapons, for lack of a better term. There are a couple special weapons that are worth pointing out because they're kind of like Roshar specific, based on the books. But like a Warhammer and a Grambo are in there. The half shards, which are like if I remember right, a half shard's like basically like a shield. It's a two-handed shield that allows them to resist blows of shard blades. The Warhammers are, in the books, they're called shard hammers a lot. So they're very specifically designed to be typically wielded while you're wearing shard plate because they have a cumbersome 5. And same with a Grambo. Like the average person should not be able to pull and draw a Grambo. So those are worth pointing out just because you might have a character that reaches strength
Spoilers for
5.
Oathbringer. How did Rock draw a Grandbow?
I know,
How did he
right?
do it, guys? I want to
Yep.
know.
That Horneater novella can come out any day now, and I'd be
Oh
pretty
God,
happy with
I
it.
wish.
So,
Yeah. I really don't know why they didn't call it Shardhammer instead of calling it a Warhammer. Maybe, yeah, I see you over there. Maybe it's because like they don't want people to think like, oh, this is an invested, like it is a mundane weapon.
yeah, and it
It's
is a weapon you can
meant for
purchase. Like
superheroes.
there actually is like you theoretically could find one of those at a shop, whereas a shard blade, shard plate, you can't purchase. Like they're only available for rewards. Um,
Yeah.
so that could be why, and that because that just makes it easy for everybody.
Yeah, I suppose. But either way, on to armor. Armor is a much more limited section than weapons. There's just not that many types of armor running around on Roshar. They don't have wool or, normal fibrous plants that we have. Yeah, you ever think about that? The fact that they don't have sheep? Well, I guess the Shin have sheep, but
Yeah, but like they always make it. If I remember right in the books, when like they see a Shen wearing like wool and stuff like that, they're always very confused by it because it just doesn't exist on the rest of Roshar.
yeah. So remember, all these fabrics are made with some strange plant material, uh,
Yep.
which is always wild to me. But yeah, so you have your several different types of armor, and instead of, in other games, armor makes you more difficult to hit. In this game, armor gives you a deflect value, which basically anytime you're hit with an attack, most of the time, unless there's a special trait involved, you just subtract your deflect value from that damage. Works very similar to in the the FFG Star Wars. They have a soak value, which is like how much energy damage your armor disperses before it hits you.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
I need to play around with that game some more. I'm not gonna lie.
I once you do, you'll see the things that is it who was it that was on the FFG Star Wars team that developed
Andrew Fisher.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
definitely some things that I'm just like, oh, did he bring that idea over?
Yep.
One day when we get to talk to him, I'll have many a question.
Yeah, I haven't got to play that one much, so I don't know. So, but you will be able to ask him as much as you want, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So the other thing that we like we've talked about the mundane armor, we've talked about the mundane weapons. We can talk a little bit about the invested weapons here now, because this chapter also has a lot of the rules and whatnot for shard blades, shard plate, radiant blades, radiant plate. We're not going to do like a whole deep dive of like, hey, this is all the different stat things it can do, but they are considered rewards. Which we'll talk more about rewards later as well, of like when you get them and how you get them. But for just some of the mechanical pieces, like the differences, a regular shard blade that we think of that like Adolin has, like Mylarin. So you are able to, it does take basically one round of combat to summon it. And that is an action that you have to use to like specify that you're going to summon your shard blade. They do have a longer reach and they do more damage. And they also have their own injury table. Because when you roll opportunities with shard blades, you can get to injuries faster. And then
As they should.
absolutely. And then shard plate, like basically just, it makes you stronger, makes you faster, and it has charges. So like which simulates how in the books it takes like 2 hits in the same spot to start breaking through the plate. So you increase your deflect value when you use one of your charges to keep your armor from breaking down. And then the radiant plate and the radiant blades are a little different, where like the radiant plate is a living armor, so you can use an action to summon or dismiss any number of it. You don't have to have it all the time. Your armor maintains its count of charges and all that good stuff, so you can be a lot more flexible with it. You can actually use it to restrain enemies, which I think's fun. And it
Yeah,
can
like
actually,
Shalon does in book 5.
yep. And then your radiant shard plate loses some of the like quote unquote negative effects, like the dangerous trait. And it doesn't add a disadvantage to your invested test either. And your radiant blade, you can summon and dismiss immediately. You don't have to wait the 10 heartbeats. When you use that interact, it just appears immediately, and you can even use a free action to change the type of weapon it is. So it does specify that it can only be non-special melee weapons. So like you can't change it into a warhammer, but you can change it
But
into
I
a
want to
regular.
roll 4d10.
Right, exactly. Because the one catch too is like the blades, when you do those malleable forms, like they will pick up the expert traits of those weapons if you've gained the expert trait in it. And you also double the normal damage die. So like if you're using a shard long spear, you'll roll 2d8 instead of 1d8. So yeah, 4d10 might be a little much as awesome as that could be.
Yeah, what did my Skybreaker have? A shard poleaxe?
Yeah, you did a shard poleaxe.
Yeah, that thing was
So
sweet.
good. Yeah, there's a lot of really cool stuff you can do with the Radiance. But yeah, that kind of finishes out the armor and
Yeah.
the weapons.
As we get onto that, there's a brief section about travel, how much you spend to stay a night for lodging. Now, if I know anything from my years of playing D&D, put this chart on your DM screen, because people always ask, like, yeah, I want to, stay the night here. And you have to be like, I don't know, it's 5 marks. And they're like, that's too much. And then you have to go dig for this table and be like, oh no, it's between wealthy and comfortable. Get over it.
That is definitely a
There's
good
also
point to have, because I probably wouldn't have thought of saving
oh,
that chart in particular.
that one of the most important charts in the book. I will argue with anyone who says otherwise. Like, it always comes up, always, without a doubt. There's also mounts. If your character wants to buy a horse or a chull, some chull cavalry might be kind of fun. There's Rhyshadium also, but that's a reward, which I don't think are really mentioned that often in the book. Like, have we ever thought about having a Rhyshadium?
So they're mentioned in the goals and rewards chapter, but that is about it. So yeah, we haven't. I don't think I've used them in anything yet either.
No,
But most of what
not
I've done are
really.
one shots where like you've already got to the point you need to get to.
Yeah, but no one's ever been like, yeah, I want to ride a Rhyshadium into this battle.
Might have to figure out how to do that now.
Yeah, I might try to bring that up. There's also various vehicles, renting them versus purchasing them. Important to know. I think there could be a fun campaign of you guys have a merchant vessel that you're slowly paying off the loan on. But that's travel. It's pretty quick, simple, and then we get to fabrials, which are confusing
Yes.
for me at least.
I'm not going to pretend that I'm any expert at fabrials yet.
No, absolutely not. I do have a buddy that's threatening to play a listener Artifabrian in a game.
Oh no.
Uh,
Might
and
have to read this a little more.
it's like, listen, if you come in understanding how your fabrials work, we're cool.
Oh yeah. So the fabrials are considered so they fill a lot of different roles. They can be as mundane as a span read, they could be as uh like high level as a soulcaster. But basically it's how like in the books, Mistborn technology is very much like the technology we think of on our planet, right? Rashar is very much like everything is considered a fabrial that's technology. So like a heating fabrial might just be a radiator heater to us. But
I can't wait for them to call a flashlight like a
a
glow
light
fabrial
fabrial.
or something silly.
Yeah. I'm actually pretty excited for those, like, because I still struggle with calling all birds chickens, but it's still funny in a
Oh, I
a
love
little
it.
bit to me.
All birds are
Um,
chickens.
Yep. So yes, so the way these work, like they have charges that you expend. So like just for and they have a chart, thank God, for these like explaining how many charges each one has, how much they are to purchase. Some are reward only. But for example, like a pain real, they have two different types. So one that can cause more pain, and then one that can numb pain. So kind of like a little push and pull mechanic there, but like they each have three charges. And basically once you're out of charges, you have to refill it with Stormlight by changing the gems out or by leaving it out in a high storm.
Mhm.
I don't know that we need to go through all like 30 fabrials that are listed in here.
No, I don't think we do. I will say, there's a chart labeled standard fabrials. It's on PDF page 266, book page 262. Like, if you have a character interested in fabrials, or if you're interested in fabrials, have this chart on hand. Copy it, put it on your DM screen. Just have that page bookmarked if you're one of those puts tabs in books people. I never was. And you can like reference this section at your convenience. It's pretty in depth. We're not going to, we're not an audiobook service. We're not going to read it to you. But if you have questions, you can dig into it yourself.
No, this chapter does have a lot of the crafting rules.
Yep, that is the final portion of this chapter.
Yeah, so it does walk you through how you can craft just regular standard fabrials, but it does have the rules too for inventing unique fabrials. So that's because specifically the scholar tree, as we mentioned before, has an Artifabrian path. So like if someone's playing that, they're obviously going to be interested in fabrials and coming up with their own stuff. And it does walk you through all the steps between like choosing the effect, getting the materials, trapping the spren. It has the DCs listed, all of that. We're like we said, not an audiobook. We're not going to go through all of it. But I have seen this mechanic in work as far as the crafting goes. And I like depending on what your role is with your modifier will determine like how good the material you craft is. And they have rules for upgrade. They have a chart that gives you ideas for upgrades and drawbacks, but it also does say like the GM, if you've got one that you've thought of, you can also do that. I think when I tried crafting something in one of the games you were GMing, like my roll kind of sucked, but like it wasn't like terrible. It wasn't like a 1 or a 2, but it was like a 9. So instead of being able to craft it in a day or two, it was like, hey, you spend the entirety of this downtime taking the time to craft this item.
Exactly. Because, like, very rarely do you want to be like, yeah, you absolutely fail. There are times where that's fun, but, like, when there's a situation with limited downtime, like I think this was, it's like, yeah, you know what? That's sort of the drawback, is that it takes you this whole, like, you lose the opportunity to do anything else.
I will say, depressing story from when I was playing the Star Wars D20 game. When I finally leveled up to where I could build my lightsaber as a Jedi, the guy gave me like 3 different handles I could use, and one of them was like the curved Count Dooku blade, which I was like,
Oh,
"Oop,
no.
yep, getting that one
Did it
Rolled in that
require like an
one.
extra? Oh no.
Rolled in that one. So it blew up on the table and I had to go with a different handle. Because he was like,
Uh,
dude, if you would have even rolled a 2, I would have been like, it just takes you a really long time or made you try again. He's like, you rolled a 1,
had to
it
be a
blows up.
one.
I'm like, I
Oh
get it.
no.
That was the
Uh,
first nat 1 I'd ever rolled too. I was like, oh,
yeah,
that's
that sucks.
depressing.
Honestly, best part of any Star Wars game, tabletop video game, otherwise, when you get to make your lightsaber. Like,
Oh, yeah.
I'm not like, I like the smuggler underworld stories that aren't force based, but holy cow, anytime I get like you build your lightsaber cinematic, like Star Wars The Old Republic, putting together
Yep.
your lightsaber right at the like level 10 or whatever when you're getting ready to leave Tython. Really sweet. Um, but back to crafting, there's a bunch of features you can get and upgrades. Some of them are pretty cool. It'd be interesting to see, how do you lethally design a shield? Um, you know,
I've thought of
the
all the dumb weapons in Elden Ring where you're like, I'm wielding a rusted anchor. Like, so I'm trying to think of like what are some like really stupid
Elden
but
Ring
yet
does have some silly weapons.
oh, they're great.
Truly.
Like they are dumb. Like they look completely stupid. However, they always end up making those weapons like crazy powerful for some reason. But
Yeah.
like the one I started trying out recently is a thrusting shield where it's a shield that you hold two-handed, but it
Oh,
has blades on each end.
I think I picked up that shield.
Yeah,
Anyway,
it's a lot of
back
fun.
to back to what we were talking about. Fabrial crafting, there's multiple steps as opposed to regular crafting. Like you have to trap a spren to craft a fabrial, and there are different tiers of doing that, and that kind of determines your result. Uh, there's different metals you can use. These custom fabrials are really your own oyster, and for someone much more creative than me, I guess what in the car I came up with the idea of like how the fourth bridge works, or that the one that simulates flying for Kaladin, basically having little span-reed darts that you drop the conjoined ruby down a pit, and then the dart launches out of a gauntlet
That'd be pretty sweet.
at the speed of the falling thing, so it very quickly reaches terminal velocity, and you have the Rosharan version of a six shooter on your wrist.
Heck yeah, that'd be freaking awesome.
So that's the only thing I've come up with.
I
But
just try to think of I always end up trying to think of like dumb things that I see in movies and video games, and I'm like, how can I do that and make it work on Roshar? As
there
silly
you
as it
go.
sounds,
That is a good way to do it.
I love it's so bad that it's good. The 1986 He-Man movie
I have
with
not seen that.
oh my god, it's so bad it's good. Because of course it's classic 80s. They have to travel to Earth because He-Man should be running around on Earth the whole movie for some reason, aka budget. Um, but
Yeah,
they have like these like flying like disc, and I'm like, oh man, like there's got to be a way because the fourth bridge makes me think of that, like to create some kind of repulsor
yeah.
that you
I
could
mean,
like.
there's the flying discs in Wheel of Time. People
Oh, that
riding
is
around
true.
on.
So anyway, so
That's
I mean
fabric
that's really
crafting.
yeah, that's really about all I've got on crafting because it really is just limited by the creativity of the person doing it. So I'm
And
pretty
your
excited
rolls.
because
But
yeah, well, I'm pretty
have a high
excited
crafting skill, have a high intelligence.
I'm getting ready to start running Stonewalkers on Monday, for like full like beginning to end, and I have two different scholar characters, but one of them is going to be an Artifabrian, and I'm pretty excited to see what Dustin comes up with. So yeah, so that really is chapter 7 in a nutshell. Moving on to chapter 8, which
Yeah,
is
goals and rewards. Woo. Uh, you know, a big part of your goals and rewards are your character's purpose and obstacle. Those things that kind of seem like generic RP sort of language on your character sheet. You can really use those to inform your character's journey, particularly with goals and rewards. What do they generally want to achieve? That should probably be in line with their purpose. And then how does some own failing of their person sort of prevent them from reaching that? What do they have to overcome? If your purpose or what you want to do is try and help people, but your character has an inherent selfish streak, that's their obstacle. And
yeah,
that
it
gives
can
like
be as
narrative worth to overcoming it.
yeah, and it can be as mundane as like you have a specific fear, like you've got a fear of heights, you've got a fear of small spaces, whatever.
Oh yeah,
Or
I'm not climbing ladders.
right, but in the
Uh-uh.
book, but like in the books, you've got everything from, clinical depression to addiction. Like this is where in your session zero, like it's a really good idea to cover how deep do you want to go, how heavy do you want to get, because some people really want to tell those stories. But session zero is a really good time to talk to your characters or to your players about their purpose, their obstacle, because that is the overall driving force of their character. You know, so I really think that's a good place to talk about it and see how in depth people want to go.
Oh, absolutely.
So goals are kind of the smaller version of that, right? Your purpose should be your overall, like you don't get rewards for your purpose, but like someone like Kaladin, their purpose is protecting other people. But he can do that. And then like his obstacle, besides the obvious just depression, but like he will protect people and neglect himself by doing that. So like that is that could be also his obstacle if you don't want to go as heavy as the depression part. But then on the day-to-day session to session, that's where your goals can come in. And your goals are what you're rewarded for. So there's a lot of guidance for creating goals in the book, which I do like because it lays out, hey, these are the steps you can take if you need help coming up with goals. I think a lot of us when we first got these the PDFs were like, this is a hard thing to wrap our head around. But the more I've been playing it and working through my characters, like I've been pretty impressed at how quickly my characters come up with these goals. It does have some examples, like it can be you finding a missing person, or I want to become a noble, repaying a debt, getting revenge, stuff like that. But it does give a lot of guidance for the players and the GMs in the game for goals. A good like kind of rule of thumb is that you advance roughly like one tick on your goals per session. Now, if you have 5 goals, that's not going to make a lot of sense. But if you have like 1 or 2, it makes sense to try to accomplish those goals as you're going through and try to at least get 1 tick per session. That way your players feel like they are progressing through those goals.
Yeah, and now, well, that's a good guideline. I do feel like as a GM, like you shouldn't stress yourself to hit that because part of it's on your players.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're gonna have a shopping episode. A shopping episode, no one's hitting a goal.
I mean, unless it is possible, I guess, if you were Vex, Vex might accomplish a goal when shopping, more in the negotiation side, but most characters probably aren't going to. I can promise you, I'm not. I very quickly become the person bored during a shopping episode.
I mean, like, yeah, or like if it's like taking something from Shard of Opportunity, I feel like Farav might have a goal that could be fulfilled in a shopping episode, I suppose, like as a fellow merchant or a craftsperson. But generally not. It's okay to not hit a goal, or even if it's like, it isn't character X's episode, but character Y and W, yeah, they hit some goals. Uh, even after having this chapter and reading it, I struggle to come up with goals unless I'm like in the campaign and then I can have campaign relevant goals. Like I only have one character out of several at this point who has had he has a goal that is larger than the scene he's in or the chapter he's sort of playing in.
Yeah, I have one that because I just got done. Like I said, I run my session 0 tomorrow, but I did like a one-off because I feel like and this is like a little side tangent GM thing with goals. Like I wanted to check with everybody, like, hey, are you wanting to go down a radiant path? Because we're planning on Stonewalkers as 7 levels, so like you'll have a chance to do it if you want to. Do you want other people to know you're going down that radiant path? But then, do you have any other goals? And I have one character who, like, his goal is to return home, and that's his like purpose because he's been displaced. He's and his sole purpose right now is to get there, to get home. So all of his goals, he's been like gearing towards like, yeah, I'll do this thing in the moment because it helps me progress towards getting home. Like, so he almost has this like super big overall get home, and then he has a really good grasp on his character. So like he's already thought out like 2 or 3 different ones where it's like, oh, but if I have this person help me, they might be able to point me in the direction of this. So he's already like building out his rewards for his goals, and he doesn't even realize he's doing it.
Yeah, so
which is kind of fun.
that's where I was gonna tie it back into. what do you, as the prospective GM of this, what do you see as the reward for achieving these goals? Like, say he makes it back home. What is his reward there?
So he is very much like that's when he's retiring from adventuring. So I'm also
Oh, okay.
interested
So
to see.
that's more of his purpose than a goal then. That is a,
Yes. Yeah. So it is how his purpose is tying in. So it really is that's his purpose, and then his goals are all leading towards that purpose. So he's got a good grasp of how all of those stack. But
yeah.
some of those rewards might be like gaining a companion, or like a lot of times the goals, you always want to think of a tangible reward. Like, I accomplished this goal, so now I get a shard blade, or I accomplished this goal and I get a fabrial. His are more like, I accomplished this goal and it gets me one step closer to completing my purpose. But it
Mhm.
might be, hey, like, I have no idea how I got here. I have no idea how to get home. So like, I'm going to accomplish this goal because it's going to give me a contact that can start pointing me in the direction I need to go.
Yeah. I get that. I am playing in a Stonewalkers game, and my character, Ivan, he has this goal of tracking down his missing uncle. And he knows, like, the guy went missing in the war camps, why, to bring him into the story. And then I kind of see his reward is maybe having a connection with one of those underground groups, like the Ghost Bloods, kind of tying in a little bit of that Shalon-esque story from the books. And that's one of the rewards that are possible, connections, either with like a noble patron or a powerful group. That is something that can be a reward for a goal achieved. And a multi-stage goal like the eventual finding of his uncle, I can see a couple different things in there as options.
Yeah. And I think this wouldn't be a bad time to go ahead and go over like the different categories of goals. Because there's a few different kinds, or of rewards. Sorry, I said goals, meant rewards.
Mhm.
So the different categories of rewards, we have companions, fabrials and high quality gems, ideals, patrons, shards, and titles. And then also anything else your GM can come up with. Like, this is a very GM player collaborative chapter. But the companions, like, you might gain some bodyguards, a squire, an animal companion, a scribe. And the book has like examples of, hey, if you're tier 1, these might be the kind of companions you get. If you're tier 2, etc., so on and so forth. Because obviously the higher level you are, like if you get one bodyguard and you're level 18, I don't know that it's really going to be all that super useful.
Well, but you could also get a chasm thief.
Which might be very useful. Yeah, and then as we've talked about fabrials, like this is where those unique fabrials, the materials to make them, that's where those can come in rewards. Because every fabrial does require like a certain type of metal, a certain type of gem. So, and not all of those are readily available. So this is where they can come across as a reward.
Yeah.
Let's
There are
see.
also that sort of special section, ideals. So anytime you take a radiant order, you get that special goal of speak the insert number ideal. So obviously it's first, then second, third, fourth. And those are goals you have to sort of achieve towards. And you can see that in the fiction, between Oathbringer and Rhythm of War, where Kaladin is really struggling to say the fourth ideal. He's slowly gaining the steps to that fourth ideal.
Yeah, and the one I do want to draw back to the episode we recorded the first time we talked about ideals. Keep in mind from a GM perspective here, like, don't make your players wait 5 sessions to swear an ideal if they're hitting the points they need. Now, if that's the story they want to tell that they're struggling to hit that ideal, do that. But it does take 3 ticks to go to the next ideal. It's okay to kind of speed that. And I'm not saying don't just run through it, but like make a conscious effort to help that person hit that ideal, because also they're taking a talent to do that.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
so,
ideals are definitely special, and it's like make it a narrative moment when a character takes
and if
an
you're looking,
ideal talent.
I'll plug some stuff for Brotherwise here, but if you're looking for a fun little adventure to figure out what that looks like, Speak the Words, the adventure that's out there and available as a one shot, it does a really good job of giving you an idea of like, hey, you've got someone who's 2 ticks towards this ideal. Here's a situation. Let's come up with a way to make this cool and awesome to do in the moment. So that's just, it is a good example adventure of seeing some characters swearing ideals, and might help you along with some creativity if you need it.
That one
Uh,
was a good.
Yeah, I really like that adventure. I'm not gonna lie. The next one is patrons. So these are like NPCs that can help you. Think of them as like a named NPC that gives you quests and stuff like that. There is an expectation of keeping that person. So like some examples of them in the books are Navani, Maraise. Like Shallan's using Maraise as a patron. Like she's using his name to use the Ghost Bloods. He's giving her task rewards. Like I honestly, that relationship is a really good one to look at for what does a patron look like? What do they? How do they drive the story? And then what kind of rewards does the character get from those? But the benefits, like they have some stuff listed in the book, like the different types of lodging that you might get because you're able to use that patron's name or their benefits. They have examples of a few different like generic patrons, like one's a Knight Radiant, one's a trader. But the World Guide has like I think it's chapter
Yeah.
5 of the World Guide has a
It has
list.
some pretty detailed, like, hey, do you want Navani Kolin as a patron?
And if you do, this are the benefits you get from it, depending on what level you're at and what you're doing. Do you want to go into shards?
Yeah. So shards are another reward, and they're kind of separated by tier. I disagree with the order personally. You have, PC tier 1, there are no shards available as a reward unless you're a very generous GM, which, sometimes is fair.
I might have done that at Bridge 9 and with a level 1 character
Yeah,
because it was a one shot and we weren't going to play again. So why not?
exactly. Tier 2, Shard Blade, Tier 3, Shard Plate. I just feel like in the books, it makes more sense for Shard Plate to be first. I feel like more characters have access to Shard Plate than Shard Blades, but that's the way they chose to do it in the book. If you don't like it, homebrew it however you like. And
Yeah.
there's several ways of winning shards that we see. There's marriages, there's, conquering a country, defeating someone in a duel. It's a cool thing that people definitely want to achieve. They do mention Rhyshadium here as sort of the third shard, but they're actually a companion reward.
Yeah.
Other than
So,
that, shard blades and shard armor or shard plate are in the items chapter, and then titles. How do
yeah.
titles work in this game, Kyle?
So there's a few different title, like they have some examples here, and then when you get these titles, they can give you different benefits. So one example they use that makes sense is like when you've gained the title of captain, you're typically leading a platoon. Once I learn how to talk, of 50 troops. So you'll actually have to help maintain order, keep up morale, but then you can also use them almost as companions throughout the game. They will even have like some material holdings. So like at the lower tiers, you could become like a lieutenant, a researcher, and then you could gain like access to barracks, a lab, a base of operations. And then the higher your levels go, the more material holdings you can get. So just to give you an example, like tier 3 would be a high marshal, so you would have a large military camp. If you're a fourth Don Light Eyes, you would have a palatial estate. So those are just some examples of the different titles that you could have and then what kind of benefits they can give you. But that
Yeah.
really wraps up that chapter. Is there anything else you want to point out
Well,
on goals and rewards or items?
I think titles are pretty cool. I've seen games where titles are essentially like extra features for your character, and in here they're a little more narrative. But I think that, this is a section that has a lot of room for GM sort of discretion and homebrew to expand and give you something interesting to do with it. Uh, but other than that, I think we'll look forward to, starting chapter 9, and holy cow, that is gorgeous Wayne Reynolds art to start that chapter. Sorry, I
Yeah.
just scrolled to it, and he's one of my favorite artists. Like, I specifically bought his Magic the Gathering Secret Lair, and you can immediately tell, oh yes, that's Wayne Reynolds. Holy
Nice.
cow!
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, we're coming to the end of it. Remember, this podcast is brought to you by Wooster, the brush company. When you need to paint a clean edge, I'm kidding. It's not sponsored by anyone. It's just us chuckleheads talking about CosmereRPG because we like it.
Absolutely. So next week we're going to cover chapters 9 and 10, which is adventuring and combat. Might even sneak in conversations and endeavors. Really, just going to depend on how much we feel like going through that. But then after that, we will be finishing out the book with game mastering, and then starting to break into more specific episodes. So, looking forward to it. But with that, Let's roll our plot die and raise the stakes. This has been Complicated Opportunities.